Okay, section number 2, norms of behavior or guidelines for ceremony. I want to start this section by just making explicit why this is part of ayahuasca. Some people can feel, particularly when they are projecting their internal emotional experience onto the environment, that ceremony is like strict and rigid and there shouldn't be any rules because ayahuasca is liberatory and they feel so free. They just want to do everything they can to connect with someone. That's a really, really beautiful and honestly sacred feeling that comes up with ayahuasca. That said, an ayahuasca ceremony is kind of like a delicate ecosystem, and it needs really delicate balancing so that every single person that's drinking ayahuasca here can do deep, vulnerable opening work while feeling safe. And so all of these rules ultimately carry with them the ethos of just trying to be considerate and respectful of other people. Much of this section is kind of oriented towards just helping you understand what some people can be experiencing on ayahuasca, and thus what it actually means to be considerate and respectful. It's so important to understand that working with a medicine with such an extensive toolbox means that all of the people around you could be feeling something you can't even imagine or didn't even know was, possible with ayahuasca while you're feeling nothing. And so that state of they could be feeling this is a really important ethos to bring into how do we comport ourselves in ceremony to take care of this group space. We don't like rules. It would be a lot nicer for us if we didn't need them. It's kind of a hassle for us to enforce them. But as I said, these rules are coming from a place of care and concern for group well-being. And so we really appreciate it when people take it seriously, not just as some, black and white limit on your ability to express yourself, but really as an expression of how we care for the people around us. Ultimately, every single one of these has been added into this list over time based on things that have happened in previous ceremonies that have hurt people. In the very early founding days of LaWayra, there were no rules. There's kind of a free-for-all, and every group would kind of arrive at their own set of rules after a couple of ceremonies. Like someone would be super deep in a process, and the person next to them would be feeling really social and try and talk at them for like an hour. And the next day they'd be like, yeah, that was like really disruptive and honestly kind of scary. Like maybe we could agree that within ceremony, there's no talking. That's how all these have come. So as I was pointing towards earlier, the reason all of these rules are in place is to try to maintain a safe, secure, and enjoyable ceremony for everybody involved, ensuring that you're constantly cared for throughout your work with this medicine. So let's jump into it. The guidelines. Number 1, you can say it at home. What is your bucket? Your bucket is your best friend. We like to say this over and over and over again because one of the most commonly forgotten rules. As I said, bring your bucket with you everywhere you go. That includes your bed. That includes out to the fire. That includes when you go up to the altar so you don't puke on Fernando. That includes to the bathroom so you don't get caught in the double trouble trap. Having it with you is really helpful. We've had ceremonies where people were puking all over, like sprinting through the ceremony space, making a hero's dive for their bucket. Sometimes they made it, sometimes they didn't. Having your bucket in your proximity just helps everyone here kind of not have puke all over, and it's really nice. Number 2, the ceremonial space. Essentially, it's kind of hard to give you a sense for the ceremonial space while I'm just on video, so make sure that they show you what it is when you get here. But 2 things to keep in mind. A, there's a raised stage part of the Maloka, which is a staff area. And so please never go onto the stage. And there's also going to be a table, which is the altar that Fernando, our shaman, uses. Please don't place things or use that as, a place to put your cup or anything. So the altar and the stage are for staff. And also the other thing I'd like you to know is that all of the ceremony space is ceremonial. So they're kind of different sectors, right? There's this central area I'm in right now where the matches will be. There's the fire outside, there's a small grass area, and there's the bathroom. Particularly the bathroom can feel a little bit like the office break room, like you're filling up your water at the water cooler and bantering with your coworker. All of this is ceremony. And so no matter if you're in here, this kind of central area, or in the bathroom or at the fire, all of these guidelines apply to wherever you are, so long as it's before when that pre-recorded music comes on. Another guideline on leaving ceremony when you take ayahuasca are responsible for your safety. And so we ask that you never leave ceremony until 2 or even 2.5 hours after your most recent cup of ayahuasca. It's not just like a legal thing for us. We take our responsibility and the fact that you've put your trust in us to take care of you very seriously. And the place where we have designed for you to be safe while working with ayahuasca, the place where we have a big team and staff that have been trained to keep you safe, is in the Maloka. So it's important for us that if you are going through or have the potential to enter into an ayahuasca experience, you're in the Maloka. So please don't leave before 2 or 2.5 hours. Another element is please find a staff member and let them know or ask them if it's okay for you to leave the ceremony before you go. Even if it's been 4 hours, please find someone and say, hey, I'm thinking of heading back, like all good. As I said, we're responsible for you. And if we know that you're not meant to be here, then we can be fine. But if all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, where's John? Like, did he disappear? Did he run off into the woods? Another staff member can be like, no, he checked with me. He's back in his room. He's all safe. But it's really important for us that we know where people are during ceremony. Another reason is that it can be kind of hard to appraise where you are in the medicine. And so you can think you're like totally normal and back down, but from an outside, more trained perspective, we can tell that you're still tripping pretty hard or maybe going to fall back into another wave. And so sometimes we'll be like, I think it'd actually be better if you stayed here for another half hour, 45 minutes, just went through this experience a little bit more and went home. It's good to know one of the common ways we resist ayahuasca is by wanting to leave this space. And so if you feel an urge of like, I don't want to be here anymore, this is stupid, or like, no, this is too chaotic, like that might be some form of resisting a process coming about. So 2.5 hours after your last cup, you should not be leaving before then. Please find a staff and let them know before you leave. Bathroom protocol. As I mentioned, bathroom, very important, very sacred with ayahuasca. If you feel the need to go to the bathroom at any time, just get up and go. Some people's ceremonies are really just like shuttle runs back and forth between the bathroom stall and the mattress, like 10, 15 times. It happens with ayahuasca. It's totally normal. Don't feel any shame. That is part of the work here, but just go for it. We generally will be watching to see if anyone needs assistance getting to the bathroom. Sometimes people lose some physical strength. They're kind of unsteady or wobbling on their feet. We may come over and just kind of give you a hand or wrap your arm around us to get you safely to the bathroom. Sometimes ayahuasca has impacted your system so deeply that you feel as if you literally could not walk safely. If that's you, raise your hand, get a staff's attention, and we will carry you to the bathroom. We have done it innumerable times. There is no shame. Again, that's part of this work and we're totally used to it. If you can't get that arm up, get your finger up. If you can't get your finger, call out someone's name, but get someone's attention. We'll take you over there. It's good to remember for the bathroom to kind of think of it as a functional area, right? So I'm going to the bathroom because I need to take care of some task. Once I've accomplished that task, I'm going to come back to the central ceremony area, either to my mattress or to the fire. One of the reasons for that is because of something called the bathroom realm. It sounds fake until you experience it, but the only way I can describe it is it's this sort of common experience that people have where they're in the bathroom and then all of a sudden they feel trapped in this sort of dark, sticky, trippy confinement where they can't get out of it. They just feel like it's like that has become the realm that they exist in. If you know that you're going to the bathroom to do something and then come back, it's easier to not get trapped in that way. Because some people feel as if they get trapped there, if we've noticed that someone's been in that stall for like 5-10 minutes, we may come over and knock just to make sure that they're okay. That's not because we're like, you've been in the bathroom too long, you need to get out of there. It's just because we want to make sure that you're feeling okay where you are. Sometimes the task that you went to the bathroom to take care of does actually take 45 minutes, and that's totally fine. And again, part of this process. You will notice when you get here that the locks to the bathroom stalls are not in the conventional, like middle of the door area. They're actually up in the top corner. The reason for that is because some people enter into a deep process when they go to the bathroom. For a lot of people, purging is what actually kicks them into their journey. And so if you're in the bathroom and you've purged, you could activate to a point where you go super deep and don't have the capacity to get out of the bathroom. Sam, the CEO and founder, had one of his deepest ever processes locked in a bathroom in the jungle with a metal door. The shaman couldn't get in there to help him and he actually ended up hurting himself a little bit. So we've engineered locks such that a team member could reach over and enter if you need help. But we're never going to enter into the bathroom unless we can clearly tell that you would need assistance. Last thing about the bathroom, when you leave your stall, it can be helpful to leave that bathroom door open. So when another person goes into the bathroom, they can see, oh, okay, this door is open. That's free for me to use. And so they don't have to go around knocking and someone being like, oh, occupied while everyone's on ayahuasca. So as I said, go to the bathroom whenever you want. Feel free to use this as assistance if you need help getting to the bathroom. Try to keep the bathroom functional. If you need help, feel free to yell out and get our attention. But generally, just kind of remember the mattress, your spaceship is going to be a nicer place to journey than the porcelain throne. Okay, the fire. During the entire ceremony, we're going to have a fire going outside. We ask that guests never touch or tend to the fire. There's the obvious reason that people on a psychoactive substance can harm themselves unknowingly if they are interacting too intimately with a very hot thing. But more importantly, in my opinion, in the Inca tradition, the fire is referred to as the grandfather spirit and plays a really important role in the ceremony. Fernando has asked us specifically to minimize the amount of hands interacting with the fire. So that's another reason we ask that you not touch or tend to the fire during ceremony. Also, because of its sacred role in ceremony, we ask that folks not throw things into the fire, such as napkins, trash, candy wrappers, cigarette butts, things like that. The only thing that would be appropriate to put into the fire during ceremony is a pure tobacco offering. So if you've smoked a cigar and you have a little bit left, giving an intention and putting that into fire is appropriate. But even things like cigarette butts that have all the other stuff in it, we would ask to not be placed into the fire. Another reminder, please absolutely no phones or smartwatches in the maloca during ceremony. Just leave them in your room. Better yet, turn them off for the entire night and don't come back to them until later the next morning. We will have a clock in the maloca so you can know what time it is. You're also welcome to ask any of the facilitators. And we're going to give you, the lighter should have a little flashlight on the bottom. So those are the two main things your data phone for. Please, please, please don't bring it. It's pretty disruptive for other people. A note that I would give if you're coming here with a friend or a family member or a partner, generally, I would recommend avoiding choosing a mattress next to them. That can make it really hard to focus on yourself and let go of control in ceremony. If I'm on my mattress and I'm laying next to my partner and they're having a really difficult ceremony, it's just super hard for me to focus on myself. I'll be focused on caring for them, and I might actually disrupt the work of the guides and taking care of them. Know that in ceremony, we as a team are responsible for taking care of everyone. All you have to do is take care of yourself. And so that's a lot more easily done if you're on opposite sides of the ceremony space, not in close contact with that person. Some of you watching may have already heard that in a lot of ayahuasca traditions, if someone is menstruating, they're not allowed to drink in ceremony. They have to sit that ceremony out and not participate. Here with Fernando, we're very lucky that he is happy to work with someone who is menstruating and on their period. There are just a few slight adjustments that need to be made in order to take care of him. I know when I first heard this and coming here as a patient, I kind of imported my Western way of thinking about this onto this tradition by thinking, that's misogynist because they don't like women, particularly because it's about menstruation. They think women are dirty and bad. I can assure you, after working here for a long time and working closely with Fernando, that is not at all the basis of this adjustment. This kind of gets into the more mystical, shamanistic element. The best way that has been explained to me, and honestly, it's still pretty hard to put into words, is shamans, of course, are highly, highly attuned to energy and kind of like the vibe. And ayahuasca, essentially the sort of energetic direction of ayahuasca is like upward and celestial. Essentially, what a lot of these traditions are recognizing is that menstruation is an incredibly powerful movement and flow of energy, which I'm sure anyone who menstruates would agree with. The thing is, shamans say that the energy of menstruation is more grounding. And so there's kind of like an up from ayahuasca and a down from menstruation. They can cause a tearing to those people who are highly attuned to energy. So for me as a facilitator and someone who's not been trained into shaman, I don't have an issue with being physically close to someone who's menstruating, but I've heard plenty of stories and actually seen a few times shamans become quite physically ill from proximity to menstrual energy. So as I'm saying, if you're menstruating at any time during your retreat here, you are able to participate in ceremony. We're just going to make some slight adjustments to keep you physically further from Fernando. To summarize, if at any time you enter menstruation while you're at retreat or you're menstruating when you arrive, you are able to drink in ceremony. We're just going to make a few slight adjustments to be able to keep Fernando safe and healthy. So find a team member, let them know that you're on your period, and they'll let you know what the protocol will be. Earlier, I mentioned that ayahuasca really doesn't like movement. There's kind of one chief exception to that, which is dancing. Dancing can be a really beautiful expression of joy or a way of working with a purge or kind of letting go of old stagnant energy. So dancing is absolutely a beautiful part of working with ayahuasca. But we ask that it be done in a certain way such that other folks are not being disturbed if they're not in a dancing mood. So if you want to dance, kind of two things we ask are that A, you do it closer to where the band is playing and not like directly over someone who's on ayahuasca. If you're tripping and you open your eyes and there's some person like that right above you, it can be pretty frightening, like what's going on. So over in the area where the music is happening is a nice way of separating those spheres. And secondly, we just ask that you not make a lot of noise in the dancing. And so not like, or like stomping your feet. You can be energetic, you can be expressive, but just minimizing the noise so it's not disruptive to other people. The last note I like to make on dancing is in the 14 months I've worked here, I have never once been in a word circle and someone was like, oh, James was dancing last night and he's a very bad dancer and I didn't like it at all. Usually people are just pretty psyched that someone is enjoying the experience and expressing themselves. So if you want to dance, I would recommend dancing. It's one of my favorite parts of ceremony. That said, just to add another thing, dancing can be a way of escaping a deeper process that needs to be confronted calmly and smoothly on the mattress. And so it is worth being tuned into the shifting, constantly moving balance of, is what I'm doing in ceremony working with the medicine, or is it resisting and trying to get away from something the medicine is bringing to me? So being tuned into that can be good. The final category for guidelines behavior is the longest and most complex, and that is noise. In general, ayahuasca ceremonies are a time to go inwards. Most people, once they've worked with ayahuasca, they understand that the process that ayahuasca wants you to go through is generally trying to meditate, quietly reflect, or enter into some sort of trance. That tends to be the usual tone of this specific medicine. And with ayahuasca, as I mentioned earlier, some people outside of trying to just calm down and trance out can become extremely sensitive to noise and will find it impossible to work with ayahuasca if there's too much random noises. So on the one hand, for those reasons, we do our absolute best to keep ceremony as quiet as we can. However, on the other hand, no one should expect that an ayahuasca ceremony is going to be totally silent and that there won't be random distractions that sometimes crop up. Ayahuasca ceremonies can be noisy, and it sometimes is just the nature of people going through these deep processes that the medicine is bringing them through. People purge, of course there's music playing, we as staff sometimes need to talk to a patient or to each other, and sometimes people start crying loudly. Sometimes people will briefly laugh, sometimes people will breathe forcefully to make it through a particularly challenging element of their journey, and very rarely sometimes people do start screaming and things like that. So here's a delicate contradiction that we as staff are trying to balance. On the one hand, trying to keep ceremony as quiet as we can. On the other hand, the fact that noise is a natural and predictable part of ceremony. The way we tend to try and navigate this balance is by distinguishing between uncontrollable and controllable noise. What does that mean? Uncontrollable noise is essentially noise that is coming from one's experience with the medicine. So that's things like purging. Don't be shy with your purge. That is a natural and beautiful part of work with ayahuasca. Some people feel like they need to go run off to the bathroom or the furthest reach of the grass patch and hide their purge that other people aren't grossed out. That can be considerate. Might also be an expression of some shame or difficulty taking up space. So I like to say right off the bat, purging is beautiful and feel free to let it go. I will say, just as a side note to that, there are some people that you can kind of tell are going for an Oscar with their purge. We call it scream purging. It's a little bit performative. If you find yourself on the very loud end of purging, maybe dial it back a little bit. But generally, by and large, just let it go. It's part of working with ayahuasca. Other forms of uncontrollable noise would be uncontrollably, there you go, crying or laughing, screaming, sometimes muttering to oneself. If it's coming from the medicine and you cannot control it, then it's okay. That is part of ayahuasca and you can't control it, so you don't have to worry about it. If you hear some noise like that from someone else and the staff isn't doing anything about it, generally we're going to take it to be uncontrollable noise and within that threshold for when we would make adjustments to the ceremony space for that noise to exist. If someone is making noise and it's disturbing you, you can come to us and we will all do our best to figure out that situation. Sometimes though, the reality is you just have to deal with it. And it's actually a pretty cool part of working with ayahuasca is you can deal with that frustration and try and learn from it. That is ayahuasca in itself. So many people have been absolutely enraged by something during ceremony. Like, I hate this person. I'm so annoyed by them. Why are they making this noise? Why is no one doing anything to stop them? And then in the morning, they'll be grateful about it happening because they've learned something about themselves from that reaction. So this is a balance for you to strike. On the one hand, it is okay to be like, hey, this is really disruptive and distracting me. Could you guys please try and do something about it? On the other hand, sometimes the reality is it's uncontrollable noise and therefore part of ceremony, and you just have to work with your own reaction to it. But it is never appropriate to like roll over and shush someone. Be like, oh, like they said no making noise. Please leave the management of the space to us, the team. And also remember that oftentimes if someone is making uncontrollable noise, it's probably important for them to go through whatever they're experiencing. So that's this hand. That's uncontrollable noise. Over here, though, is controllable noise. Controllable noise is the noise that we, as people trying to be respectful of this ceremonial space, are able to minimize. This includes things like footsteps on the wooden floor. It's a great practice of mindfulness to take each step intentionally and try and make it kind of quiet and soft, a little bit elven-like, instead of big lumbering steps to go to the bathroom. In general, it's just kind of being conscious of every noise you make. And so that's if you're moving a chair, closing bathroom doors, communicating with us, listening to the music, just trying to minimize noise. And so we ask, even if it was the best song you've ever heard in your life, please don't, clap after they finish playing a song, do something like this, but please don't clap or sing along to the music, really. The most important form of controllable noise, though, is talking to other patients during ceremony. This can surprise some people, but we ask pretty firmly that you do not talk to any other patient during the ceremony. There's a few reasons why we try and respect socializing within ceremony. The first is that you may be distracting that person and they don't want to talk, but they're just being polite. Also, within this first reason, it can be really anxiety-inducing to people to think that they may need to socialize with someone when they're in an altered state of consciousness, or that they're responsible for being presentable. So just making it clear from the outset that there won't be any socializing helps a lot of people relax into the space and go into this altered state of consciousness and release that normal that we typically feel tethered to. The second reason that we ask for there to be no socializing during a ceremony is because even if I and the person next to me are absolutely psyched on talking to each other, there could be other people in our surroundings that would be really disrupted by it. Generally, just talking and socializing disrupts the kind of ceremonial vibe, which is basically the feel of ceremony being a sacred event for deep internal work. And that's actually like that vibe is a really delicate thing, and talking is a great way of disrupting it and making it feel like something else where people can't do that sort of work. The third reason is that through talking, it's very, very easy to get sucked into someone else's journey. So imagine I'm going through a process and I'm having one of those great, beautiful, everything is connected, the world is perfect, the fundamental building block of the universe is love journeys. And someone else that I want to talk to is going back into their childhood and healing some cornerstone, very fundamental trauma that has been limiting their life in myriad ways. If I talk to them, I might get sucked into that pain and suffering. And conversely, also similarly negative, that person may get sucked into my beautiful journey, when really going through that difficult, tragic experience is part of the healing process that will really allow them to step forward in life. It's so, so important that we go through the experiences ayahuasca has given us. And when we're talking and socializing, it's really easy for that to become muddled in a way that's actually, it's kind of hard to understand until you've seen it happen. One of the final rationales that we all agree to not be socializing extensively and talking to each other in ceremony is that even if someone doesn't look like it, a person can be in a very fragile, suggestible mental state in ayahuasca. And if you haven't been in a lot of ceremonies, it can be really hard to assess how that person is doing. If someone is in that very deep, open, kind of fluid mental state, uncontrolled external stimulus can be very confusing, scary, and even damaging. I personally had a ceremony where I activated late during the day ceremony, and I went very, very, very deep, like to an extent that I had no idea was even possible. And because it was later in the day, I was like laid out on the mattress, and people kept coming over to try and talk to me, to ask me questions, to try and take care of me. All of it was good-natured, right? Like they all meant the best. But because my mind was in that state, that uncontrolled external stimulus made me really, really confused. I had no idea what was happening or why these things were making noise at me. I could tell they expected something from me, but I didn't know what it was. And ultimately, in that brain state, I developed some sort of like psychotic explanations for why this thing was happening. In that suggestible state, those can kind of stick around for a while. And so it took me a bit of time to work through it. This is an uncommon thing, but it can happen. I'm totally fine now, as far as I can tell, but it was a pretty upsetting, difficult, scary experience. This is one of the fundamental elements. This is what I'm talking about with why we have these guidelines. I might not be able to tell, but the person right next to me could be in this crazy altered state of consciousness, having one of the most profound, beautiful, but also potentially scary experiences they've ever had. And so I need to be considerate of what can I do to give them the space to do that without imposing myself on them. Those are some of the rationales we have at LaWayra for why it can be helpful to just let go of the idea of socializing and talking to people while we're in the sort of meat of ceremony. I want to acknowledge that I get how challenging this can be. I myself have had plenty of journeys where I felt this overwhelming love for all living things that I want to share with everyone around me, or I heard someone say something in Word Circle that morning and some insight that I think could really help them come, so I just want to share it. I want to hug them, whatever. This can feel restrictive. I understand that. We understand that at LaWayra. But essentially, when we're in ceremony, taking our process inside and giving everyone else as much space as we can to go through their process is one of the main ways that we respect this medicine and its power and insight for what each person needs to heal. So I get that it can feel restrictive, but this is an essential element of doing this work and respecting other people's capacity to do this work. I also personally think it's easy for us to underestimate just how much we can say with our eyes. We can give the biggest hug with a meaningful glance. We can say, "You're the best, I love you," with a smile. Use this power and then connect generously with words later outside of ceremony. It'll be a lot more meaningful and impactful that way. Trust me. So that's the kind of broad breakdown of noise. Uncontrollable noise. If it's coming from you, you don't have to worry about it. And if it's coming from someone else, know that that's part of ayahuasca and it's okay. And controllable noise. Otherwise, doing our absolute best to just kind of keep noise to a reasonable low level. It's worth noting, though, of course, noise is not like this binary where we can just put it all into these separate buckets and wash our hands and be done with it. It's a spectrum, and there is a middle ground between those two. Maybe you're laying on your mattress and tears are streaming down your face and you're letting go of this massive sadness from wherever it's coming, and you just feel like you need to sob and release like a whale and just let that energy go and be done with it. But you could just kind of hold it in and keep it down. That's the middle ground. And there it's okay to let yourself go and like let that sob, let that wail come out for 15, 30 seconds. But just know that the idea is returning back to that quietness when you're able to, once you've let go of that thing. It's a balance that we all are trying to strike together. If you're someone that tends to be anxious and quiet and worried about negatively impacting other people, remember you have as much right to taking up space in ceremony as anyone else does. On the other hand, if you're someone who tends to be very noisy and extroverted, takes up a lot of group space, and you know about yourself that you really like attention, it can be helpful to know that about yourself and focus on sharing the space with other people and trying to be a little bit quieter than you normally would be. So how we relate to all these rules needs to come from a place of self-knowledge, honest self-knowledge. Another kind of middle ground between this uncontrollable and controllable noise is one thing that honestly can sometimes happen is people will try to pass off controllable noise for uncontrollable noise. Like they'll be speaking really loudly or talking in tongues, and they say it's because the medicine is making them and they can't stop, but really it's pretty clear that they just need attention. Just so everyone knows, that tends to be pretty obvious to us as facilitators. We have seen so many processes that we can tell what truly is coming from the medicine and what's a show. So it's just worth knowing that's always pretty obvious to us. All right. I've dedicated so much time to noise, honestly, because this is the most complex element of ceremony that we as a team try to balance. It's quite challenging for us and can take a lot of energy. Know that as staff, as I said, we are responsible for that balance. There are two things that you can do in helping us with our responsibility. Number one is just remembering, keeping in mind, and being respectful of ceremony as a quiet time to explore the universe that every one of us has inside. Just remembering that. Number two is being understanding if we come over and make an adjustment. I have seen so many people have their journeys ruined by excessive, unnecessary noise. And so we are pretty reflective about trying to keep this balance. If we come over and make an adjustment, understand that It's coming from a place of trying to take care of everyone and trying to keep this big ayahuasca ceremony boat pointed in the right direction. And it's not personal or trying to cramp your style. The two most common reactions when we come over and kind of make an adjustment on the ceremony direction based on someone's noise or behavior are anger or guilt. Anger is like, oh man, like fuck these people. Like they don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand ayahuasca. I'm so free. Like I need to be expressing myself. If that's the response that's coming up for you, please try to remember that it is our responsibility and duty to keep ceremony as a place that's productive and safe for everyone here, and that we've gone through a lot of ceremonies and tend to have a better understanding of the balance that needs to be struck. The other, as I said, common response is guilt. And that's like, oh my God, I've done something so wrong. They hate me. I probably ruined everyone's experience here. We're going to be so mad at me in the morning. With all of these reactions, what you want to do is step back and see them as your own. We have had a bunch of people that have needed adjustments before. We'll have a bunch more in the future. I understand it's really hard to remember this when you're buzzing with ayahuasca, and it's rarely coming from a place of anger or indictment. I can say for myself, when I enforce a rule in ceremony, 4 out of 5 times, I'm totally calm and there's no anger attached to it. And that 1 out of 5 time is when it's like the 5th time that I've told someone that in the ceremony, and it just is very clear that they're ignoring me and being kind of disrespectful. So if that anger or guilt is coming up, just relax and come back. As I said, those 2 most helpful things you can do for us, being cognizant of noise and being receptive if we make an adjustment. The final note on noise is please try and not become like agitated or scared if you hear some intense noises in ceremony. It's completely normal most of the time to hear these things. And really, we as facilitators have seen it all before. Generally, where this noise is coming from is someone in a very deep process going through an experience with the medicine, and they're probably not even aware they're making it. If someone's having a hard time, there's this very beautiful urge that some people feel to go over and care for them and take care of them and offer them what they need. But it's really important that you not get involved. Very occasionally, someone will get really agitated. We'll be over there helping them. Fernando will be over there helping them. We know what we're doing, and the last thing we need is someone else getting involved. Finally, if you are the person that's having a hard time, 9 out of 10 times we're attuned to it. We're probably somewhere close, ready to be called in. But sometimes the truth is we don't notice. Someone might be quiet as a mouse. Feel free to ask us for help and guidance. We'll be happy to help you through it. So, those are the guidelines. That's section 2 on norms of behavior in ceremony. I want to just note that those truly are guidelines. We ask that you do your absolute best to follow those out of respect for the tradition and for the people drinking ayahuasca with you. But we understand that a one-size-fits-all doesn't work for every group, every person, or every experience with ayahuasca. So do try to be in communication with us if there's something you need. We've had patients who have told me something like I'm feeling really angry and it's scaring me. I feel like I need to slap the ground, but I don't want to frighten everyone else. Usually we'll try and find a facilitator that's free, take you outside of the ceremony space, give you that space to go through it. Communication is king. We are going to try to make sure that everyone is able to go through a process in the way that will be most productive for them. That said, just remember, sometimes we can't give everyone exactly what they want. And this is where that ceremonial balance comes in, knowing that sometimes we have to forego something we want in order to take care of someone else and respect them. So understand that we as staff are going through the process of constantly trying to walk this delicate balance, but know that it's coming from a place of care and concern for everyone here. I want to wrap up this module just by focusing quickly on respect and gratitude to kind of come back all the way to the start about these rules not just being something put in place to hold you down, but an expression of something that's inside of us. I think respect and gratitude are a great way of guiding your comportment through ceremony, and that should function on 3 levels: to yourself, to the group, and to the tradition. To yourself, a lifetime of labor has gone into bringing you to this experience working with ayahuasca, bringing you to a place where you can explore, heal, and grow. And I think you should be proud of yourself for making it to ayahuasca, be proud of yourself for taking charge of your own healing and stepping into this challenge. It will not be easy, but if you commit to these guidelines that we've put in place for you to go through the experience you're looking for in coming here, then you really can mine some incredible gifts. And I've seen a lot of people's lives changed in very incredible ways. So respect and gratitude to yourself. Respect and gratitude to the group is understanding yourself as a part of a whole. This is challenging with the sort of individualism that a lot of us grow up with, but we at LaWayra are just one element of this whole thing that's happening. and recognizing that every single person that's come here has gone through a similar process arriving here to let go, to heal, and to grow, sometimes even a much bigger journey. And so by holding space, by going internal in ceremony, by being respectful and caring for other people, that's how we can show our gratitude for being part of that group. Finally, the third element of respect and gratitude is respect and gratitude towards the tradition and this medicine. Ayahuasca is a deeply mysterious, profound, and guarded treasure. Depending on your anthropological study, it's been around for between 4,000 and 8,000 years. One saying says that when the Spaniards came to Latin America, the indigenous communities gave them the gold and hid the ayahuasca. This is a really profound, beautiful thing that we have the privilege to be alive during this very narrow slice of time in which it's been widely accessible to people not from indigenous communities. In my opinion, we should just be grateful to have the opportunity to drink it, let alone having any experience. And so just being respectful and grateful to be part of this tradition and following it as it's been for thousands of years, rather than trying to shift it into whatever we want it to be. Some crazy experience, some dance party, some massive philosophical conversation with someone while they're tripping themselves. This is a privilege for us to be drinking, for us to be taking part in, and it's really important for us to center that as outsiders, not as a right, but as a privilege. To summarize, those are the guidelines. At the end of the day, it's just trying to take care of everyone and keep the ceremonies a space that's going to be productive for everyone. The best way of moving through that experience is by centering, finding, and growing respect and gratitude for all the things around you.